Hello, BookTube. I continued the experiment, this week-long experiment of leaving my little puppy alone for little stretches of time. I continued that today. This is the last time. I'm going to give her a few days to recuperate in my constant company. But today I had a few more errands to run, and of course, when I was out and about, I decided to go to the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston. For those of you who are new to the channel, the Brattle Bookshop is an old, used bookstore at the heart of downtown Boston that has 3 floors of extremely reasonably priced used books and a buying table on the first floor that is constantly stacked with new additions to the stock. The rotation rate at the Brattle Bookshop is just amazing. So far ahead of most other used bookstores that I have been to, or that you're probably familiar with. You're probably familiar with what I'm talking about. I know from small towns in the Midwest, you have a used bookstore, and you know the stock. You know what's there, and you know when there are new additions. You can spot them right away, and there are never that many, and they're not always that promising. With the Brattle, it's the exact opposite. The world comes to their pricing table every single day. But the shop is not only that. The shop is also there's an outside lot next door that has wheeled carts and shelves along the walls for bargain books, $1, $3, and $5. Usually in excellent condition. They're not junk. So it's a great place for a book lover to go, and I've been going there forever. Forever. I've been going there since before their current location, and love it. It's a balm to me. I even when I'm not finding stuff and squealing over what I'm finding, it's soothing to be there. As odd as it sounds, it's soothing to be there with all of the books. In a real way, they are old friends of mine, and I get to just look at them all, and out there on the carts, provided it's not freezing cold or boiling hot or anything like that. And today was lovely. I get to just commune with them, and plus I love talking and joking with the staff as well. So I made a point, since I was out doing errands, to go to the Brattle, and I found a bunch of stuff I wanted to show it to you. Starting off with not 1, not 2, but 3 Penguin Classics to add to my wall. And the first one of those is the Penguin Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which I didn't have. This is in a translation by Brian Stone with a nice new introduction. It's a perfect edition paperback. The only Penguin Classic that I have of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is, I think, an old anthology of old English poems. But nothing standing alone on its own. And same thing with this next one, which I do not have. It's Plato. This is a translation by Christopher Marlowe of the Phaedrus, which is one of my favorite. It's a tiny little thing. One of my favorite Socratic dialogues about truth and beauty, mainly about beauty and what aesthetics are. But one of the things I like about the Phaedrus is that it wanders. It has a few themes, but it wanders. The fictional setting is just a conversation out in the countryside, and it actually ends up feeling like a conversation in the way it moves. So I was very happy to find it in perfect condition, trade paperback to go on the shelf. And then the third Penguin Classic was a bit of a find. I mean, I've had the Phaedrus before. Of course, I have other editions of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and also. I might point out, this is extremely obscure at this point, and it's never going to be finished. But I used to be the managing editor of an online literary journal called Open Letters Monthly, and in the beginning months of Open Letters Monthly, we were privileged to be publishing an adaptation of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight by Adam Golaski that was better than any other adaptation that had ever been done in 1,000 years. And I really, really wish that he had taken that project home, so to speak, and finished it, and then shopped it around to a publisher. But if I remember, I will try to find at least the first installment of his Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which he just called Green, and post it for you so you can see what I'm talking about. But the third Penguin Classic was a find, because it was something I'd never had and didn't really know existed. It's this, The Bounty Mutiny by William Bligh and Edward Christian. And they didn't collaborate on a book. This is not a book, it's an anthology of writings connected with the HMS Bounty. So you have Captain Bligh's book on the history of the mutiny, And you also have the editors also assembled the litigious court case documents between Edward Christian, Fletcher Christian's brother, and William Bligh. And I didn't know that such a thing existed. I've seen excerpts of that legal stuff, and I've also read excerpts of Captain Bligh's book. I've never actually read his whole book, but I had no idea that Penguin had ever made them into one handy volume, and that's fantastic. So I was happy to find all of those things. The next one we've seen on this channel before, and it is a bugaboo of mine. It's one of those books. Maybe you have them too when you're reading. It's rare in my case. I have been a book critic for such a large proportion of my life as a book reader that my judgments tend to happen and then stick, so to speak. And then, years later, I will revisit my judgment. I make a point of revisiting all of my judgments and also keeping my mind open so that even an author or a type of writing that I don't like, I'm still going to try it just in case it works on me, or in case somebody does it in a new or interesting way, or in case an author tries something new that I like. But there's also that book, that small population of books where you read it, you like it just fine, you get rid of it, and it sticks with you, and you keep reacquiring it and getting rid of it. You keep getting it and saying, no, I don't really want that. Then you get it again, and you think, no, I don't really want that. And this next book is an example of that, and I'm determined this time to keep this volume that I got. We've seen it on this channel before. This is R.F. Foster's biography of W.B. Yeats. This is volume 1, Apprentice Mage, and volume 2 is Arch Poet. And I've had both at many times. I just recently had Arch Poet in a trade paperback that I probably showed on this channel. And sure enough, got rid of it. I found this at the Brattle, and none of these things cost me anything because I have lots of credit at the Brattle. And I'm going to read it again. I've read it probably 3 times. I'm going to read it again and then make a decision to keep it. And wait, because if this was out on the sale carts, then Archmage will come out on the sale carts too, and then I'll just get them both, put them on the shelf, and never leave them, instead of this weird rondelay where they keep coming and going. So that was strange. I felt a little weird seeing it there, realizing that I wanted it, realizing that I had, by my own devices, gotten rid of it. Anyway, this next one, I know the refrain in all of these Brattle hauls is, I don't know what happened to my original copy. I don't know where it went. I don't know why I got rid of it. And this is one of those. This is true for a lot of these things. This is Steve Pincus. This is his book, 1688. The Rise of Modern Revolution. This is about the Glorious Revolution and the ousting of King James II. And I got an advance copy of this from Yale when Open Letters Monthly was just starting 10 years ago. And read it and loved it. Got the finished copy and read it and loved it. Got rid of both and got this trade paperback from Yale when it was new and got rid of that as well. The minute I saw this, I realized that mortifying moment where you realize, oh my God, I don't have a copy of that book. And I loved it. So I have no idea why I got rid of it. The thing I love most about it is that Pincus echoes something that I have looked for in vain in histories of the Glorious Revolution or in biographies of William and Mary, about the nature of the event itself. It's so often sort of whitewashed as a political transaction rather than what it was. And I remember the first time I read this, I was blown away when Pincus just addresses that directly. He says, though we have come to view the Glorious Revolution as bloodless, aristocratic, and consensual, the actual event was none of these things. The revolution of 1688-89 was, of course, less bloody than the violent revolutions of the 20th century, but the English endured a scale of violence against property and persons similar to that of the French Revolution at the end of the 18th century. English men and women throughout the country threatened one another, destroyed each other's property, and killed and maimed one another throughout the revolutionary period. English men and women from London to Newcastle, from Plymouth to Norwich, experienced violence or threats of violence and lived in terrifying fear of violence. This was not a tame event. That's wonderful, and the book goes on from there. It's great in its character. There are tons of great characters in the Glorious Revolution, and it's really good in what the stakes were what the deeper ideologies were involved. So I highly recommend this for the two of you who are interested in the Glorious Revolution. I was always mortified every time I went to England. I was always weirded out by how little the English people that I talked to knew about this seminal event in their own history. I guess I really shouldn't be, since I know for a fact how little history Americans know of their own history or anybody else's. But still, I think the whole event is incredibly fascinating. And I saw this book and realized that I had gotten rid of every incarnation that I got for free. Well, the next one is another book that I've had before and got rid of, and I brooded over it for a long time to buy new at a Barnes & Noble here in Boston, but it was a cheaply made trade paperback, and I thought, you missed the hardcover. You never see the hardcover for sale used, and you don't bother to buy the trade paperback because it isn't made sturdy enough to read or reread. And then I found the hardcover today, so I don't have to worry about it. This is David Riggs's The World of Christopher Marlowe, all about the life and times of Marlowe, and all of it done with a really clean, start from scratch attitude that I really like. Starting off right on the first page, Christopher Marlowe was born on the threshold of the modern theatre before the words playwright and dramatist had entered the English language. The earliest playhouses appeared during his boyhood, when custom-built theatres sprouted up on the outskirts of London. These new establishments had a limited purpose. Skilled actors performed makeshift dramatic entertainments for an audience of unpracticed theatre-goers. That's great, because that stresses that it wasn't just the playwrights who were learning. It was the audience that was learning. Marlowe endowed this rickety startup venture with a precious legacy of intellectual property. I think that's wonderful, and that goes all throughout. It's I always tell myself when I see Christopher Marlowe biographies that they are pretty annoying. A lot of them are pretty annoying, and I always tell myself, surely the only book you really need is The Reckoning by Charles Nicholl. That's probably the only book you need. I mean, it gives you a thumbnail of Marlowe's life and an overview in many good chapters of his literature and its literary merit and whatnot. So that's probably all you need. But no, a second volume on Marlowe is not going to kill me, especially one that I liked. Then the next book, I knew it was going to happen. The Brattle is a wonder of used book availability. It's like nothing that a lot of you have in your own hometowns, as I've heard in texts and emails for 2 years now. The Brattle really isn't like most used bookstores. Most of you don't have access. So when I hold up or talk or praise a book that's old and out of print, I make a point of saying your library might have it, you that sort of thing, because I know that a lot of people on BookTube don't have access to a really great, really busy used bookstore. So when I make a recommendation of something that's old or out of print or going out of print or hard to find, I often accompany it by saying, with that in mind, I often accompany it by saying, if you can't find it, if you have slim pickings for used books in your neighborhood, then let me know, and I'll try and find it myself. It's not just the Brattle. The Boston also has plenty of charity shops, used bookshops of all kinds. So I see, even with these limited outings away from the puppy, I see large amounts of older books. And this next book is one of those books, and it is bespoken. I need to go through my my Twitter DMs or my emails or my YouTube messages. I need to figure out, if you're watching this video, you can help me. I need to figure out who it is that I promised this book to and get their address and get it on its way. And this is Robert Bakker, The Dinosaur Heresies. His great book about, it's a fantastic dinosaur book, so I think it was probably connected to the links that I put on various social media for Steve Brissatt's book, The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, which I reviewed just recently. I'll go first to find whoever this is. But this is Robert Bakker's groundbreaking book about dinosaurs being warm-blooded and an offshoot of the larger dinosaur clade evolving into what we have around us now as present-day birds, full of the author's own illustrations, full of wit and wonderful thought experiments. A fantastic general science book to read, even if you're not interested in dinosaurs. And if you're interested in dinosaurs, this is literally one of the 10 or 5 books you have to have. And I said that to one of you in the discussion of Steve Broussard's book, which is another one of those books you have to have. And I've totally forgotten who it was. So if you're watching this video and I'm going to find you in my messages, feel free to save me the trouble and email me, because I have a copy now. I said at the time, I will certainly find this at the Brattle, and you might not. If the nearest used bookstore to you is 2 towns away and has almost no stock overturned, then you might not. You might not see it in a brace of years. Whereas even at the time that I was talking to this person, I knew that it wouldn't be more than a month until I saw a perfectly good, solid copy of this at the Brattle or somewhere else, and I did. So I have it ready. If you're watching, I have it ready for you. I just need to figure out who you are. Then the next one, a really tough subject, and a book that I read when it first came out, and I don't know, maybe the subject is just too raw. I didn't like the book, or at least I was under the impression that I didn't like it, and I don't know why. I don't know. I know, looking back, just objectively, that technically speaking, there was nothing wrong with its execution. I thought there were a few blind spots here and there, but that's been true of all the books on this subject. I got rid of it. I got an advance copy, and I got rid of it. And so when I saw it again today for free, I grabbed it because I'm worried that my own emotional reaction to the subject might be blinding me to critical analysis of these books. This is Masha Gessen's book, The Brothers, about the Tsarnaev brothers who conducted the Boston Marathon bombing a few years ago here in Boston. Set off 2 pressure cooker bombs designed not only to kill but to maim, and did succeed in doing that. They succeeded in maiming a whole bunch of people and in killing people, including a little boy who was cut in half. And there's surveillance footage of these brothers at the scene, and they're wearing backpacks, they're wearing caps, they look like, students or grad students, or restaurant workers, something like that. They look like ordinary undergraduates here in Boston. And in one frame, the younger brother is smiling ear to ear, and that frame is timed. He already knows that one of the bombs has gone off. That's why he's smiling. There's no delusion. There's no paranoia. The younger brother was not brainwashed. He was not psychotic. He was not. He lived. The older brother did not. The older brother was killed, first shot by police, and then accidentally run over by his little brother in an attempt to get away from the scene. The younger brother is alive and is living at taxpayer expense for the next 70 years with 3 meals a day, clothing, exercise rights, books, writing materials, access to the outside world through phone calls and Skype, and he shouldn't be. He wasn't brainwashed. He wasn't psychotic. He wasn't under anyone's mental sway, and he was smiling at the moment when his device that he designed to create the maximum amount of pain was cutting a little boy in half. And he was wounded and injured badly, and went on the run from the law. And Boston went into lockdown, into martial law. The streets were empty. Everyone was told to shelter in place, stay in your homes, while a massive coordinated law enforcement effort searched for this kid. And they eventually found him. It was actually a trail of blood that led a suburban homeowner to the boat, the tarp-covered boat that he had in his backyard. The younger Tsarnaev brother had crawled in under the tarp into the boat, and when he was located there, law enforcement converged on his location, and the first law enforcement agent who got within point-blank range of him did not put 5 live rounds between his eyes. I don't know why. I think hypothetically maybe the thought was, we don't know how big this terrorist ring is. If it's not just him and his brother, he will have important information about who else it is. But there were computers. There were laptop computers. There were cell phones. There were all sorts of relatives in Boston. There was no shortage of other information. There was no information that was going to be in this kid's head that wasn't going to be retrievable elsewhere. And I don't know if maybe the thought was maybe he was brainwashed by his brother, maybe he was brainwashed by some radicalized community, and that maybe he's therefore to some measure innocent. But he was smiling when his device went off, and when he was caught, he was in the act of scrawling a vicious manifesto on the inner wall of the boat in his own blood. So there's absolutely no question of innocence. There's no mitigating factor whatsoever. And because the first officer to reach him did not execute him, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has to support him until he's 90. Alive. Now you could say, okay, fine, but you've deprived him of his freedom. But if you went to that little boy 10 minutes before he was ripped in half, and you said, I have a choice for you. I'm going to put it in really basic terms because you're very young. Which is better? For you to live and be able to read and walk around and think and talk, but not leave the room. In other words, you don't have your freedom anymore. Or you're going to die. Which of those would you prefer? The little boy would have said, well, I'll take the first one, obviously. Even at his age, the little boy would have said that. And I don't see the reason in being more merciful to a cold-blooded murderer than he was to his victims. But then again, you can see already from that description that this subject is still working on me. That when I saw live film footage of bombs going off outside my library, directly across the street from where I've spent an enormous amount of time. Anyway, you can see already this subject works on me emotionally, and the accounts that I've read have not pleased me, and I'm starting to wonder, when I saw this at the Brattle, I thought, maybe the accounts aren't pleasing you because of that, and not because of the accounts themselves. So I will now read everything on the Tsarnaev brothers over again. All the older books that I saw and dismissed, I will pick up, like this one, and all the new ones. Anything new that comes out, I will do, and come to understanding of it on my own. So this is that story. Masha Gessen is an immigrant from Russia herself, and tells the whole story of their family's long background overseas, and then the brothers' radicalization, and a very tense. I remember it being very effective recounting of the bombing itself. So it's on the reread pile. And then the last thing I want to show you is also on the reread pile. It's perpetually on the reread pile. Every time I get a copy, I praise it, sometimes on this channel, sometimes in emails, and immediately get a taker who says, oh, would you please send it to me? So I never have a copy. Whether it's a big, thick mass market or a hardcover or whatever, I'm forever getting them and sending them out. And this time when I saw it, I thought, well, you could still send it out, but it's high time for a reread. You haven't reread it in a long time. It's this. It's MMK's The Far Pavilions, her gigantic historical novel, a great, gigantic historical epic that she worked on forever and ever, and I think she was 70 when she sent it around to publishers, and I think one of the first publishers that she sent it to jumped at it, and it became a runaway bestseller, just millions and millions of copies in every library, on everyone's tongue. Everyone wanted it. Everyone was coming to bookstores. In the late 1970s, I think this came out, wanting a copy of this book, no matter how big it was. Customers saying, oh, God, I can barely carry it, but I do want it. I think that's just fantastic. It's a little ray of hope for all you writers out there that it's never too late. But this is just a rollicking story. It centers on one man who grows up. He's born in the shadow of the Himalayas, and he grows up. He's English, though, and he grows up in the split world of the Great Game and English colonial possessions, and also England itself, and just it does everything. It does everything exactly right. It is an immensely satisfying, big fat historical fiction, compared immediately as soon as it came out with Gone with the Wind, and I think rightly so. I hesitate to check to see whether or not this is in print. It'd be very sad if The Far Pavilions weren't in print. I would like to think there's a big floppy spine, the grainy textured cover, maybe new artwork, although you can't improve on that. New trade paperback of this to find a new generation, but It might not be. But anyway, that is the Brattle that I did today. The Far Pavilions. The Brothers by Masha Gessen, about the Tsarnaev brothers. The Dinosaur Heresies, which I have to find the recipient and get it out in the mail. The World of Christopher Marlowe, soup to nuts biography of Christopher Marlowe, and a study of his literary heritage. 1688, about the Glorious Revolution and the ideologies underneath it, which was the refreshing part. Then W.B. Yeats, Apprentice Mage, for the very last time. I am not going to get rid of this book and buy it again. And 3 Penguin Classics. That was not a bad Brattle haul. For my last voyage out of doors without the puppy, for a few days at least. So I'm going to wrap this up now, and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.